there are two prayers that God has promised every time to answer. And not just to answer every time, but to answer with a yes. There are two prayers that human beings can pray to which God will never, ever say no. The first one is when a lost person realizes their need for a Savior. And whether they're like the thief on the cross and says, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom, or whether they're like the publican that says, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Not one single in the history of the world, not one single repentant lost person has asked for salvation, and Jesus said no. It doesn't happen. It's an impossibility. It goes against His own promise. He that cometh to me, I will in no wise cast out. It doesn't get any simpler than that. So, Brother Harper, well, of course, we know that the prayer for salvation is one that's always answered yes. What about the Christian? You know there's a prayer the Christian can pray that God will never say no to? When the Christian confesses, not admits his sins, but confesses his sin. To confess means to agree with God. If we confess our sin, He's faithful and just to forgive us our sin and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. What we do is we admit our sin, don't we? You sit there in a seat and the Lord convicts your heart. And you get out of your seat and you come to the altar and say, Lord, I'm not the right kind of husband. I don't love my wife as Christ loved the church and gave Himself for it. And I'm not the right kind of father. I've provoked my children to wrath. Would you please forgive me? But you know, Lord, if my wife were a better wife, I'd be a better husband. And if my children were more obedient, I'd be a better father. That's not confession. Confession is, Lord, I'm not the father I ought to be. Please forgive me. I don't have any excuse for it. I want to do better, and I just ask for your forgiveness. I'm not the right kind of dad. Lord, please forgive me. I don't want to blame anybody else. I have no excuse whatsoever. It's all my fault. Against Thee and Thee only have I sinned and done this evil in Thy sight. Do you know, if you confess your sin, you're guaranteed to get a yes?